This is a video which describes how the MVC structure and the routing of my project works. The reason for me making this video is that this feature is not something that I'm going to be working on regularly, because once you write the code for routing, the rest of the work for the project is not going to have to do with how your routing was done. So I'll probably forget how I set up my routing and how my app is put together. So this video is to document this because I have a poor memory, and it may be able to help someone else set up the MVC and the routing in their project. Before I get into the code, I'm going to explore a little bit in the web browser, so the things that I talk about are not too abstract. Okay, when you put in underdog.zone, the web server redirects to buscompanyx.com. The web server does this. It's configured if it receives a request that is HTTP, in other words, on port 80. I have Apache set up to redirect the browser to load up buscompanyx.com instead of underdog.zone, and do so on port 443, which is for secure connections. I've already explained in a separate video why the domain name in my website is buscompanyx.com instead of underdog.zone. So I won't re-explain that in this video. Okay, this is the tail of the tape. This plugin in Chrome recorded everything that happened in terms of what page was requested, what headers got sent out with that request for that page, what the response of the server was, and what the subsequent request that the browser made. And all this happens automatically because the response of the Apache server tells the browser to go and make another request. So it's not in my hand, it is automatic. Okay, so originally we requested underdog.zone and we sent out these request headers. The server responded with this response, and my plugin basically puts this all under the category of moved permanently. Next, my browser was forced to make another GET request. This time it was HTTPS instead of HTTP. And this time the domain name is buscompanyx.com. And it is my Apache web server, its configuration is what caused this to happen. It has two virtual host configuration files, one for port 80 and one for port 443, which is the secure port, the HTTPS port. And the virtual host on port 80 tells Apache to ask the web browser to redirect to this domain name and use HTTPS. Okay? So when my browser made that request, it got another response. See response headers? This was made by Apache. And that response told my browser that it needs to go to location app. Okay, so my browser made another request, this time with location app. And that's when the response from the Apache did not ask it to go anywhere else. Okay, see, there's no location header in the response. And that's why this plugin said that this transaction here below this green section was okay. Okay, so first we had a moved permanently response, then we had a found response, then we had an okay response. Okay, all right, so next I want to show, okay, let's say I remove this /app. Let's say I even remove this. Okay, see, it goes to app. And the reason for that is the web root, the document root for my app, for my website, has an index page called index.php. There's a PHP command in it which tells it to send out a header to the browser for redirecting the browser to a URL which has a URI of /app, this right here. And when this URL is requested, instead of landing on index.php, Apache serves up another script. This one is called app.php. And what that script ends up doing is loading up the default controller, which is the controller for the home page. And that's why you see the home page right here. Now, I'm going to try something else, and I'm going to attempt to explain it. We're going to go to a different URL. Let me go there by typing in, because that'll be more clear. Okay, after app, I'm going to have a /. So it's going to be registration /page. Then I hit enter. We get the registration page. The word registration is the name of the controller. The word page is the method within that controller registration which was called. The reason for having this section here with the word app, that just helps me with my proxying on the web server. If my web server situation or configuration or whatever was different, I would not need that part. However, that is over there because it's targeted by a regular expression on the Apache server. And it's targeted for redirection to the PHP-FPM process manager using the fast CGI protocol. I had to use a string to target these types of URLs. And the string app is the one I chose. Okay, so that's why that is there. Okay, now another thing we can try here is let me change the word registration to home and hit enter. Okay, it's app home page. How about I remove the word page? Okay, and hit enter. Okay. We still are going to app home page, but the URL does not say app home page. The reason that we go to the page method in the home controller is because page is the default method, just like home is the default controller. Okay, so that's how my website works, the MVC and the routing and all that. Now, having explained all that, I'm not even sure I need to go and explain the code because the code is just an implementation of the things that I have just described. But I'll just briefly show the code. So we have index.php, okay? As you can see, I run the redirect to function, which I have defined in functions.php, and it redirects to app. It basically adds the string app to whatever the browser already had, and thus the browser is able to go to buscompanyx.com /app because the browser already had the https / buscompanyx.com portion. Okay, that's the way redirection works. So that's index.php. Next, let's take a look at app.php. Where is it? There it is. Okay, now that is basically a typical script, whereas index, that's not a typical script. This is the only time I'm going to be doing things this way, pretty much. Normally, all the requests are going to go to app.php. And in here, we're loading the configuration file. We're defining some constants. We're including the autoloader for Composer. We're including the functions.php script. And then we create an instance of the application class. Okay? And that's defined in, let's go to, under controllers, there's application.php. Application.php is not like the other three files here. Those are all classes which are controllers. Application.php, it's what does the routing for my MVC application. So basically what it does is it's a constructor. And what that constructor does is it checks to see if the information in the request, and that request, by the way, the portion that is parsed out by this code comes in server path info. That's the superglobal that contains the information which gets parsed out into the name of the controller and the name of the method. Now, the default controller here, as you can see, is home. The default method is page. And over here, there's a parameters array which will have all the parameters that get passed to this method. And down here, this function is very important. Call user func array. That's the actual function which calls the controller, and no, it doesn't call the controller. It calls the controller's method, and it passes the parameters to it. And whether the default controller method is used or whether the method that was specified in the URL is used, it all depends on whether the file path to that controller that was specified is found. Okay? So that's the way the routing works for my app. The other MVC portion basically, okay, there's the controller and then there's the views here, but that's a bunch of nitty-gritty that doesn't need to be in this video. And that's it for this video.